Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Louise HOBART begins now.
Good evening. A Tasmanian victim survivor of child abuse has described her distress at the hands of 2 state government ministers who refused to personally apologise for causing her offence. Tiffany SKEGGS is calling for Elise Archer and Michael Ferguson to resign after the Liberal frontbenchers groaned at a question asked on her behalf in Parliament a fortnight ago.
Tiffany SKEGGS is a victim survivor of paedophile nurse James Jeffrey Griffin. She will be giving evidence at the upcoming Commission of Inquiry, but first is speaking out against the conduct of Elise Archer and Michael Ferguson.
I have suffered significant trauma in my life, but that level of disrespect from arguably such highly regarded people was so belittling.
The Tasmanian woman is seeking an apology from the senior ministers after they were heard groaning in Parliament as a question was read out on her behalf 2 weeks ago.
The longer this process goes on and the longer I see this disrespectful and abhorrent behaviour continue, the more distressing it becomes.
Question time turned into a 2-hour affair as the opposition and Greens called on both ministers to say sorry.
So, ministers, if you don't apologise, this will be a stain on your political career for the rest of it.
Unfortunately, you have turned this into a political weapon.
Oh, rubbish. It's
You
the
have
2
turned
ministers
this.
sitting behind you.
You have turned this into a political weapon.
This is not political. This is about common decency, doing the right thing, to say sorry.
But Ms SKEGGS is reminding Peter Gutwein the issue is far from political.
I am a real person. Victim survivors are real people, and we deserve respect from the people that are currently causing us harm that has now arguably become irreparable harm.
Meanwhile, Peter Gutwein will miss Parliament for the remainder of the week after he was forced into isolation this afternoon. Political reporter AINSLEY KOCH is outside Parliament. AINSLEY, what will this mean for the rest of the sitting week?
Well, good evening, Lou. The Premier will sit out of Parliament after he was identified as a close contact of a family member who has contracted COVID-19. Now, he says he completed a negative rat test this afternoon and has returned home to isolate for the rest of the week. However, he will continue to work from home for the next few days, and Jeremy Rockliff will step in as acting Premier during Parliament tomorrow. Peter Gutwein isn't the only member of Parliament out of action this week. Greens MP Rosalie Woodruff, Labor's Janie Finlay and Upper House member Ruth Forrest are all isolating at home, and Public Health has apologised for a testing bungle which saw 19 people incorrectly told they were negative when they were actually positive with the virus. The Royal Hobart Hospital laboratory is implementing improvements to prevent this from happening again. Now, Tasmania recorded almost 2,000 cases overnight, and there are 32 people currently recovering in hospital with the virus.
A man is in hospital tonight with serious injuries following a rescue helicopter was also dispatched to the scene. Initial investigation suggests the driver of one of the vehicles may have suffered a medical episode. Meanwhile, a man in his 60s has been taken to hospital with injuries after his ute collided with a truck at Hagley. The crash happened on the Bass Highway just after 2 o'clock this afternoon. Police believe inattention or fatigue may have played a part, causing the driver of the ute to drift into the path of the prime mover. The highway was closed for 2 hours and will be closed again at 6:30 tonight for several hours to remove the truck and containers from the embankment. The state government has backflipped on its decision to shift the BURNIE courthouse out of the CBD for now. The move has been welcomed by council and local residents who say a new complex in the town centre is the right choice.
This vacant brick building across from the police station could be the perfect place for BURNIE's courthouse.
I think it makes so much sense to have it near the police station. to have it near those businesses that support the courthouse, the lawyers and the barristers and the like.
Alison CRUICKSHANK, who lives near the original proposed university site on Morville Road, is relieved the government has listened to their concerns about relocating the court complex to the outer suburbs.
We're cautiously optimistic. The Morville Road site's not off the table yet, but the fact that they've come and listened to us and taken on board our concerns and are willing to reconsider, that's just brilliant. Best news.
Acting BURNIE Mayor GIOVANNA Simpson woke up to the news today that the government had had a change of heart.
We've been heard, and it goes to show how strong a community can be when they stand together.
The state government is now heading back to the drawing board to identify any potential sites in the CBD.
We've taken the decision to run a short and targeted expression of interest process to see if those sites are available, if they are suitable, and if they can offer the same or better as the Morville Road site, and then we'll be in a position to make an informed decision.
As for the future of the existing site,
we're looking at hopefully making that a bit of green space, and would like to make that link from the CBD into our new BURNIE Cultural Centre. And that building there, once it hopefully comes down, will be a perfect gateway into that centre, and will just connect to the city, and that's what we're after.
LETITIA Wallace, 7 Tasmania News.
Aged care workers have walked off the job in protest as an ugly stoush over pay and conditions drags on. Workers at Southern Cross Care say the company is threatening to cut paid meal breaks, which will reduce the amount of care residents receive, while also hitting workers' hip pockets. One resident claims she was lying on the floor for 15 minutes after a fall until a carer arrived.
I used to be a registered nurse, and I can't believe how much work is expected from them. It's terrible.
If they lose this entitlement, residents will be put at risk, and that's why staff have walked off the job today.
Staff are also stopping catering for management functions as part of the industrial action. The Tasmanian Conservation Trust is preparing to take its battle to save native forest at Anson's Bay to the Supreme Court. It comes after permission was granted to clear more than 1,800 hectares in northeast Tasmania to convert into grazing land for cattle. The challenge is against the Forest Practices Authority and the current landowner, Liberal MP John Tucker.
500 hectares of that forest that will be cleared is nationally listed critically endangered Eucalyptus ovata forest. That's a forest type that has been protected by national law, and we should not see any of it cleared.
Amid climate and biodiversity crises, it's essential that we protect habitats such as this.
The issue is listed for hearing at the beginning of May. If given the green light to go ahead, it will be the largest clearing to occur on private land in over 10 years. The federal election funding promises are coming in thick and fast in Launceston, with Prospect Park the latest in line to benefit from the cash splash. Labor is committing $500,000 to the sporting precinct to give the change rooms and club facilities a much-needed facelift.
This project is overdue, should have been done a long time ago, but is much needed and will be appreciated by the 600 people who play football down here each weekend.
Plans are already drawn up, with the Launceston City Football Club hoping to start the rebuild soon.
The women's side of it will definitely, I think it'll flourish a little bit, especially with the Women's World Cup coming up in a few years down the track. I think you'll get an increase in numbers as well. So with any luck, if we can get something up and going fairly soon, and it is, the approval is already in DA at the moment.
The Tasmanian Liberals pledged $1 million towards the grounds during the last state election. Flight prices to King and Flinders Island are set to rise as fuel costs put pressure on Tasmanian travel provider Sharp Airlines. Over the next week, fares will jump by 6%, with the company no longer in a position to continue absorbing the rising expenses. A new surcharge will appear on passengers' tickets, but the business says it's committed to reviewing the increase on a monthly basis. Meanwhile, a statewide charity supplying food to disadvantaged Tasmanians has been forced to reduce some of its services due to skyrocketing costs. Loaves and Fishes provides fresh produce and meals to 16,000 Tasmanians a week across the state. But due to record high petrol prices, some of its deliveries to the east and west coasts have been wound back from weekly to fortnightly and in some cases even monthly.
Our fuel bill's going to increase around about $4,000 per month. It's putting a huge amount of pressure on our already knife-edge budget.
The organisation is lobbying both the state and federal governments for funding assistance to make ends meet. A new report has laid bare Tasmania's worrying childcare shortage, with families being urged to put their babies' names on waiting lists long before they're born. Researchers from Victoria University's Mitchell Institute say low socio-economic areas are impacted the most. The Central Highlands, Brighton and Meander Valley have been named as some of the areas with the worst options.
Around 61% of the state is in what we would classify as a childcare desert. So this is where there are 3 or more children vying for each one childcare spot.
The big issue is wages and conditions for educators. They are some of the lowest paid and have huge responsibilities.
With living costs on the rise, officials say it's not feasible to provide each community with childcare facilities. The state government is inviting the community to have its say on the Hobart City High development. The Education Minister today releasing a master plan which will see Newtown High and Ogilvie High amalgamate.
The campuses themselves may need to change to provide flexible, contemporary environments for our young people to learn in over coming decades.
The government has committed $20 million to undertake priority projects once the scheme is given the green light.
Bridport won't have a footy team this year after the club failed to rustle up enough players. A crisis meeting with the NTFA last night resulted in the club going into recess with the aim of returning next year. While Bridport's finances and supporter base are sound, a lack of players ultimately left the club with no option. The league is now urgently amending the fixture before the season begins in 10 days' time. To cricket, Sam Rainbird has smashed records and left Queensland red-faced in a terrifying spell at Blunston Arena. He took 8 for 21 to give Tasmania the slightest sniff of making the Sheffield Shield final.
The day it rained wickets for Sam Rainbird.
There's an edge and it's caught!
Just as Queensland looked like making a start, the 29-year-old set about rearranging the order, taking the first 3 wickets, including Test talent Matt Renshaw.
Oh, there's Clayton caught on the crease, he's out! And Rainbird's got another one.
As storm clouds gathered, a hurricane of wickets were about to fall in the extraordinary purple patch. The headline act, Joe Burns, fell to Sam's spell. Jimmy Pearson made it fifer.
Into the right-hander Pearson, he's out.
By the time he'd bowled James Bazley for a golden duck, Queensland was in deep trouble. At 8 for 90, the Bulls' future looked grim, especially with the moustached wicket machine hungry to take down a brittle tail end.
Oh, he bowled him, he's gone.
His figures of 8 for 21 are the best by a Tasmanian in Sheffield Shield history. The only other Tasmanian to claim 8 for, Peter Clough, who took 8 for 95 against WA in 1984. With the Bulls busted for a paltry 104, Tasmania is storming ahead at 4 for 157, leading Queensland by 53 runs at stumps.
Derwent will be the hunted once again this Premier League season after demolishing OHA 6-2 in the grand final rematch. WINCH scored on debut for Derwent after switching from OHA in the off-season. His brother Harry says the result is reward for effort.
I think our fitness, our new coach Nick Tremaine's just been drilling us through the pre-season. I think we just ran over the top of them in the fourth quarter.
University and Canterbury also won in the men's. OHA, Diamondbacks and Northwest Grads had winning starts to the season in the women's. And Richie Port has abandoned stage 2 of the Volta Catalunya after a bout of illness. A champion in 2015, Port was one of the favourites to take out this year's edition, but he pulled out around 50 kilometres from the finish after struggling on the climbs. Australian Caden Groves took out stage 2 following another Aussie, Michael Matthews' win in stage 1. And that wraps up sport tonight, Louise.